Many of us are taught slavery came to an end with the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. But for enslaved people in Texas, freedom didn't come until June 19, 1865. Known as Juneteenth, now we recognize it as a day to celebrate how far Black people have come and a reminder of how justice and freedom have been delayed for Black people in America.
Good morning and happy Juneteenth. Yes, this video is going to give you guys a little bit of history. We are going to talk about Juneteenth. What is that? What does that mean? Well, so I'm going to give you the Wikipedia version of what a Juneteenth is, and then I'm going to break it down what I think Juneteenth really is. So get your pen and paper ready because we're going to learn today. You're going to learn today. So according to Wikipedia, Juneteenth is also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, and the Emancipation Day. It is a holiday celebrating the liberation of those who had been held as slaves in the United States. Originating in Texas, it is now celebrated annually on the 19th of June throughout the United States, with varying official recognition. Gordon Granger announcing federal orders in Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865, proclaiming that all people held as slaves in Texas were free.
Leading us to the height of Jim Crow, where Black Americans continue to be treated as second-class citizens a whole generation later. 100 years since Juneteenth, we reach a critical moment in American history, where a movement full of young Black voices so powerful comes together that it creates real change.
Now think about that. The Emancipation Proclamation was 3 years before that, about 2.5 years before that, and you are a slave and you were already free and you didn't know it? Can you imagine you are a free slave but you still were a slave? Does that make sense? The Union's Emancipation Proclamation, say that 15 times, had officially outlawed slavery in Texas and other states in the rebellion against the U.S. amongst 2.5 years earlier. Wrong in so many ways. Texas was the most remote of the slave states with a low presence of Union troops, so enforcement there had been slow and inconsistent before Granger's announcement. So that's why they were able to get really away with it, because it was no internet, there was no social media. Newsflash, y'all free now. I can go on and on and on with Wikipedia, but I'm going to give you my little version and what I think about it and how I feel about today's joyous celebration. And how it's really becoming a popular holiday right now. My family's been celebrating Juneteenth for many, many years, as long as I can remember. I grew up in the Bay Area, so it wasn't as widely spread as it would be in the South, let alone Texas. In California, it was more of a, kind of like where Christmas is. You may not be Christian, but you still celebrate Christmas. So white people, people of non-color would celebrate Juneteenth. I remember in school we would have like a parade, and it included all people. So it was the beauty of just celebrating. I think at the time as a kid, I really didn't know what I was really celebrating. I was too young to know when we were free slaves. Today, Texas is the only state that recognizes it as a holiday. And there are also a few states who do not recognize it at all, which consist of Hawaii, North and South Dakota. Come on, catch up, guys. Get with the program. During these times right now, we all know what's going on. Don't need to repeat that. But there's also been a push in Congress to make it a national holiday to recognize the freedom of my people. It always gets me to think that I'm a race and a sexuality that is determined by the law, by Congress, by the state Supreme Court, by the U.S. Supreme Court. We're always fighting for rights, rights that was given to us in 1863, let alone some didn't even know it to 1865. I'm trying to get that out of my head. The history for myself, one of the things I've learned that even though the slaves were freed officially in 1865 and they knew it, can you imagine once you were free and they said, okay, go do what you got to do. And later on, we'll give you 40 acres and a mule. Someone said that would be equivalent to $2 million right now in those days standard. Well, they don't know about money. They didn't know about property. All they knew about is working their whole lives, watching their parents or grandparents work, become slaves, live and die as a slave. And they're the first generation as a free person. And so a lot of them stayed on their master's plantation and they continued to work, especially in the South. But once they was aware of it and to make it legal, they would give them a wage, if you call it that. It wasn't even a living wage, but it was just enough to satisfy the U.S. government that they're not slaves, we are paying them. Because they couldn't just go out there and get a job. I mean, there still was the fact that they were not Americans. They weren't even U.S. Americans yet. They were still considered slaves. They were still considered a product, cargo. So for many years to lead on, they stayed on the plantations and worked basically for free, for food, for housing. I think what's troubling the most is one of the things they took away from Africans and African Americans here in the United States is their education. They couldn't learn how to read and write. Keep them ignorant, which you look at today, they're trying to keep us ignorant. That's why I think it needs to be more importance on African Americans to get highly educated. It's one of the fundamental rights we have in the United States. I see a lot of other country immigrants come over and their number one priority is making sure that their kids get the highest education that they could possibly get here in this free country. Free. I had to get that in there. What do you guys think about making Juneteenth a national or a city or a state holiday? A lot of feedback I got was, well, why do African Americans have to have their own specifically holiday? We had that same problem when we were trying to make Martin Luther King a national holiday, which he is the only civilian who is recognized by a national holiday. Even the presidents are now President's Day. It's not George Washington or Lincoln. I think that is very important because it shows that we matter, that this man did so much for us that he deserved his own day. I still think there should be a Civil Rights Day because not just black people are suffering in America. We got people of all colors, including white people who are suffering in America. We're going back and forth about Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, Rainbow Lives Matter, Transgender Matters. I'm not going to really get into that because I have too many videos regarding that. But I just want to say that the other argument is that black people should get reformation. We still haven't got our due or 40 acres in a mill, and the government should pay us. I 100% agree with that, but not in the way that most people think we should get it. They think that we should individually get so much money from the government and do what we want to do with that money. But how do they determine that? How do you tell who's black and who's not black? Who's black enough? What if you're Caribbean black? What if you were mixed and you never was, your family roots wasn't in the slaves? How does the U.S. government determine that? I think it shouldn't be in a sense of individuality, but I think it should be paid and organizations that would help African Americans. What I mean by that is the U.S. government comes up with a sum. I really don't know how they would do that, but let's, for the sake of argument, say $1 trillion. And they distribute that to ways of improving African Americans' life. Well, or maybe getting an African American bank where they would give loans to African Americans to get them started in small business. Not in the way of affirmative action. We tried that in the 70s, although I think we should bring that back for several reasons, but that's a whole entire video about affirmative action. But giving it to organizations that can improve the quality of black people here in America. Once we're all even and have even fair share at the table, I think all lives will matter because we all can grow for the same prosperous reason. We just want to have a great life in America, just like any other kid, and have the equal rights. We don't want more. We don't want different. We want just the same rights as anyone else. That goes for whether you're gay, whether you're a transgender, binary, man, woman, But as Dr. Martin Luther King says, that's we're all created equal. We still are fighting for that. Y'all, that was 1963. When all that was still going on, because once we were free slaves, then it became segregation, the Jim Crow. That's one of the things you can Google. It's the Jim Crow, what was going on during that time, which is very scary right now, because in California, of all places, we are seeing nooses throughout California, especially in the Bay Area, one of the most sanctuary cities and counties in the United States, are seeing nooses out of nowhere in today's world. And I really feel like we're still back in the 1960s, but more in a high-tech way. Sometimes I feel like we still have slavery, but in a high-tech way, meaning most of my people are the ones in jail. And then we get the argument, well, they must have did something to get in jail. But it goes deeper than that. You got to look in the lens of black people. We always say you can't walk in our shoes, but you can come close. You can also look in it as a different point of view. Me growing up, I've always, as a black person, had to look in the point of view of white people. My education, my culture, and all that was learned the American way, and there is no other way. The Christianity way is the only way. We're 401 years of stripped culture, and we're trying to get any piece of it back. 401 years of stripped culture where we couldn't read, write. We couldn't go to the church or religion that we wanted to. We couldn't drink in the same faucet that you. We couldn't sit in the same movie theater next to you. We had to sit in the back of the bus. And I feel like that's getting lost because this generation didn't know about slavery. And I think that's why Juneteenth is very important. Me growing up, as a young kid in the 70s, there was a miniseries called Roots. And that was my first exposure of where I came from. What was slavery? And I remember the world stopped back then because it was their first exposure of what slavery really is. And I think we need to get back to storytelling, letting the world know how we got here. Do you know millions of us were brought from Africa to be millions in America, but multi-millions around the world. America wasn't the first country to introduce slave. That was Europe, that was England, but America took it to a whole new level. Now that I've educated you about Juneteenth, what can I do on this holiday? How do you celebrate Juneteenth? Well, I'm going to tell you. Just hold on, I'm going to tell you. We picture, us black people, how you doing, white people? We picture Juneteenth as more of our 4th of July. So we do things like we have barbecue. We try to educate ourselves on our own culture. We try to educate, more importantly, other people about our culture. It's not just about barbecues and celebrations and parades, but it's a reminder of our harsh, embarrassing past. But once people know their past, it's hard to repeat it. So what I ask from you guys, for my non-people of color, is pick up a book. Google something, YouTube something about African Americans. You'll be quite surprised. The talent. Well, you know we got talent. You love watching us play sports. You love us when we excel. Nothing's greater than seeing an African American achieve the top. But each decade we get one Michael Jordan, we get one Serena Williams, we get one Magic Johnson, we get one Oprah Winfrey, and we're 14% of this country. So we can do better. To my people of color, making sure that you know your history, making sure that you can back up what people say you don't know your own history and you're killing yourselves. Why should we worry about you guys if you don't worry about yourself? Again, that's a whole new video. I won't get into that. But that's what I asked for on this Juneteenth, to reflect on the freedom of my people. And passing that on to your kids. I think racism and ignorance and all that is passed down. It's not a gene. It's not a genetic behavior. It's a learned behavior. And that means we are teaching our kids racism, whether we think we are or not. I think when you tell a person they are racist, especially a white person, that sparks so many nerves. It's kind of like the same way, not as powerful, but the same way as when you call the black person the N-word. It sparks so much emotions, and you don't hear anything after that. And I think when a lot of people who are racist doesn't know they're racist, because when you think about it, when segregation was ended in the late 60s, overnight there was laws that said you cannot discriminate anymore. Overnight, you could not hate other races. You have to be just like treat anybody like the way you want to be treated. Well, that was the 60s. Those people are still alive. So I believe you just can't stop being racist overnight. It's a learned behavior, and it's so deep-rooted, it takes more than just a signing of a law. And then, once we did that, we said, okay, black people, you can come in, you can do all the things. Same way when we were free as slaves. When we were free from segregation, on both sides didn't know what to do. Well, black people didn't know. There were still people up until the 70s that wouldn't use white people's bathrooms, or it was still in the South, but they still had to do like the Montgomery, Alabama march on Selma. And then the white people was like, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I make them equal as me? I got to keep my job. I'm not going to give up my job. I still need my house clean. I still need things from these people. So we're going to slowly do it. And we're not going to talk about it. We're just going to put a Band-Aid over the wound and then put a seal on it by saying, don't talk about race. Don't talk about religion. Don't talk about the government. Don't talk about politics. And I think it's just the opposite. The reason why we're uncomfortable right now during these times, because we're not comfortable of talking about something that we were told that we shouldn't talk about. It's how you talk about it, especially on social media. A lot of people, you got to realize, social media, you are representing your company and other people, and there are people getting fired left and right because they are posting things that are mean, hate spirit, racism, that they don't even know it. When it comes to social media, it is your platform and you can post whatever you want, but you got to think about the consequences that when you post something, people are listening. You are giving information and you want to make sure it's accurate. And you want to be kind with people. It's okay to debate people, but you got to make sure you give the respect, with all due respect. I understand what you're saying. What my opinion is, try to make it a teaching moment, especially our young kids. That is our next generation. Right now, my generation and above, we're gone. But we can break the silence of racism right now by doing some simple things as educating ourselves about what is racism, recognizing your truth, recognizing your privilege, recognizing that you're not a slave, or recognizing that all people are created equal. So I hope this day you'll take it and celebrate, learn, educate. This has been going on way too long, and it's now that we have the attention of the world, it's time to make a change. So again, happy Juneteenth. I hope you guys thought this was educational. If you do, make sure you put a thumbs up. I would very appreciate it if you're not a subscriber. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to my channel. Subscribe. It's very important that you subscribe because I want a lot of people to see my videos, especially when I'm giving informational videos. And the way YouTube works is if you subscribe, they will bring it up and other people, they'll bring it to the masses and recommend my video. And that would be much appreciated if you can do that. And I hope you guys learned something. I learned something today. And it's also the weekend, so go have fun. But remember, we're still in the pandemic. Wear your mask. Whether you believe it or not, just be respectful. Just wear it. Just don't be just wear it, okay? And pretty soon we'll be out of this. Hopefully Christmas will be laughing back. We couldn't believe that we were quarantined for 2 months. I still can't believe it. But I think God was up there saying, I'm going to shake things up. And he is shaking this up. Y'all know 2020 is almost over. It's more than a half a year has gone by, and I felt like I was just celebrating New Year's Eve about how we're going to celebrate my life this year, and it's not going any direction that I thought it would be. That's all I got to say, guys. Bye, girl. Bye. See you on the next video.